Good afternoon, folks. How's everybody doing? Morning to some of you on the West Coast. So I know we're kind of in the middle of all the shenanigans, right? There's a Trump speech going on, although I think it's coming to a close. There's the meeting of the joint session in about 10 minutes, but I want to kind of duck in, get like 15 minutes here, and go into like a kind of quick postmortem of yesterday's election, because I think that is the big disappointment at the moment, is that we did not prevail in the Georgia Senate races, and there's some obvious reasons for that. And I wanted to kind of like go over some of the stuff I'm seeing and kind of like point out why I think it's really quite silly. So, this is very common, right? You see stuff like this, quote, "Suburbs, my friends, the suburbs. I feel like a one-trick pony, but here we are again. We went from talking about jobs and the economy to QAnon election conspiracies in 4 short years, and as it turns out, they were listening." So I don't agree with this, because we did worse in the suburbs in 2016. The difference is it's a trade that was made as part of the election. So, just in case you don't know, Josh Holmes, he's a former chief of staff to Mitch McConnell. And it's like, this is just something that like the GOP establishment is saying, like, man, if we just won the suburbs, if we could just win the suburbs, it's like, that's no longer the Republican coalition at its core. We eventually want to get those people back, but that's not what won Trump the election in 2016. That's not what brought people out in this year for the Senate races. It's just not what it does it, because part of the Trump affect is very alienating to people in the suburbs, and there's not really a lot of getting around that. And that's not ultimately the reason we lost these seats when we won, 3 months ago. Yet what's happening is you have, this is Crash Hour saying, emotions are running high among McConnell-aligned Republicans after the reality of what transpired in Georgia settled in. Maybe the heat of the moment, but the mood is for declaring war on Team Trump. They want to marginalize Trump as they marginalized Steve Bannon in 2017. That's not possible. The reason they were able to marginalize Bannon is because they turned Trump against Bannon, with Trump being the ultimate force of political power. And because, remember, Bannon and Trump stopped getting along. Bannon, was out there publicly. Trump finally got rid of him. But that wasn't like, they didn't do that by persuading the general public that Bannon was a bad guy. They did that by persuading Trump that Bannon was a bad guy. They don't have any sort of constituency. And all you have to do is look at the audience, out there for the Stop the Steal March today, and realize that like there ain't nobody going to oppose Trump in the base. That's not a winner. And other things to keep in mind, like people are talking about this as the collapse of the Republican Party. And, Jeff Greenfield, journalist, says, quote, "Trump is indeed leaving the GOP in bad shape, but it's worth remembering that after 8 years with Obama, Dems had lost the White House, 13 Senate seats, 60 plus House seats, and state legislatures and governorships across the U.S. By 2017, the Dems were in the worst shape since 1928. So it's not like the end of the world. We still have 50 Senate seats. We picked up seats in the House this year. We're not like the Trump strategy, if you will, of going and making the GOP a more inclusive, more working class party is a good one. I think and rather than scrapping that entirely, it's about, kind of refining off the edges. And the other thing to keep in mind is, again, the issue here is turnout, right? Like the big reason we lose is because we lost. There's, 285,000 Georgia Republicans voted for Trump, but didn't go out and vote for the Senate candidates. Like, that's the answer, right? Like, if you're looking for what's wrong, what happened, what went wrong, it's, hello, we did not turn out our voters. Simple as that. So I think, if you're trying to figure out like what's the problem here, as Richard Barra says, the DC GOP can say what they want. The numbers are clear. We fell short of Trump's numbers in the, in GOP working class areas. So what then should we be doing? Well, where is the blame? Well, the blame is on, there's plenty of blame to go around, right? This was a very close race. I think people need to keep that in mind. So, again, looking at the numbers, this isn't some like massive loss, right? John Ossoff is ahead by 20,000 votes, Warnock ahead by 60,000. So, it means we were close, but it also means that blame is collective, right? If, this takes a lot of a big screw up for an R+5 state to go Democrat. And so I think you can blame the blame in kind of, a few different things. One is there's just sort of an inexorable problem, which is when you have the demoralization of not coming out on top on November 3rd. Like, we should have come out on top. We didn't. Like, that's going to demoralize people and turn out. The second big thing is Mitch McConnell. Why are you not signing a piece of legislation that gives $2,000 to everybody? That's a real easy win. And failure to provide that easy win is a really good explanation for why we are losing this. But then third, there's also the kind of Lynn Wood caucus. Like those two ended up working together. You know, you have two different big forces about what happened in the last 2 months pushing down turnout. You have Mitch McConnell and the Senate GOP not really giving people a reason to care about having a GOP Senate by refusing to do the most obvious populist thing. And then you also have like the Lynn Wood types saying, don't vote for the Republican Senate races for reasons that escape me, because supposedly there's a way to magically solve, you know, there's this machine fraud that nobody's has any evidence of and a magic way to solve it. Like, I think that was incredibly counterproductive, and that's where you see the diminished turnout. You diminish turnout among kind of your swing voters and your less GOP attached voters by not giving out the 2K in stimulus and letting the Democrats own that. And then you also diminish turnout among some of the hardcore Trump people by saying that the election's totally rigged and there's no point in voting. And the combination of those two things is what gets you to this suppressed turnout where you get 285,000 fewer Republican votes. Don't do that in the future. That seems like a really simple thing. Like, let's not suppress our own vote. Let's also do things that are popular. And so that means like not blaming everything on Trump when Trump is a massive popular force. And it also means not blaming everything, like not, essentially excusing someone like Lynn Wood, who's out there telling people not to vote for his own candidates. And that's, I think, like the really simple, easy postmortem. I mean, but you see other things really make a lot of sense. I thought this was a good point of the tweet. Like, if we have the stimulus check, probably we win one of those races. That's probably enough to do it. But also, if Lynn Wood isn't telling his 1 million+ followers to like that John Roberts is a pedophile, like we also probably win. Like there's a lot of ways we can win because it was a close race, and so there's a lot of collective blame to go around because this was a state that should have been favorable to us. And I think this is one final good point. I thought we had the lead like 2 months ago. We had the lead. We lost it in 2 months. So there is a dynamic of, we do need to look at like what meant that we suddenly lost. And I think that this is a big part of it. And I think here's the other problem with like the cheating hypothesis. I don't think the cheating explains why our turnout is down in GOP areas, right? Like those are GOP people controlling and hardcore Trump. That's where the Trump support is. The idea that the cheating affected things there, I just don't believe it. I think if you're actually looking to diagnose the reasons we lost here, like cheating is going to be part of it. There's, whatever the sort of, base level fraud, but I think that's a way to excuse some of the mistakes made by people like McConnell, made by people like Lynn Wood. Like there's a lot of mistakes being made. So I think that's kind of a good and simple explanation of what happened here. With that, I'll take about 5 minutes of questions and then we'll go at 1. Somebody says, there are not enough legal voters to counter illegal fraudulent rigging. I just don't agree with you. I think that we were ahead 3 months ago. A lot of races, we won a lot of House races. Like if that's true, the GOP should have gotten completely obliterated on November 3rd, and that didn't happen. So I think that's a cop-out. Let's see. Somebody says 2022 is just around the corner. The liberals will piss off the country so much that the House and Senate will go back to the GOP. I hope that's right. I think that you can't just rely on your opponents being dumb. You have to actually have we need to put forward a concrete agenda of our own that is positive. I thought this from Alex is correct. The Gabriel Sterling behavior is outrageous on CNN talking trash. I mean, the Georgia GOP is actually, other than David Schaefer, who's really good, but a lot of the GOP elected officials in Georgia are real sleazeballs. Not fans of them. Really did not do a lot to support their candidates, and I think they're all going to be kicked out of office. They're all going to get primaries because they didn't do their job. Mitch blew this. I think that's one person, but again, I think people who solely blame Mitch are like not looking. This it's more than just Mitch. It's a collective failure. Somebody says sad thing is when Republicans win back the majority, they do nothing and let Democrats set the agenda. That is their history. That's a big problem, and it's going to take real change to the Democrats to fix that. Somebody says, Carpe says, you are a mistake. You. Well, screw you, Carpe. It's not very nice. That's very mean. I feel very offended. Carpe Dunctum. It's not like it's not even a real name. It's BS. Bad Polar's car rove is trash. Yeah, the GOP just needs to stop paying attention to him. thank God for Joe Manchin, says Michelle SoCal. Like, I think we got to be careful there. Like, I expect Joe Manchin not to vote for the filibuster, but that's about it. I think it's still going to be a very bad time. I mean, one of the other big losses is we're not going to be able to stop any of Biden's appointees. He's just going to be able to appoint exactly whoever he wants, and there's not a lot we can do about it. Just not a lot that we can do about it at all. Somebody says, I mean, Chris says that they lost because of all the BS Georgia pulled in the presidential election happened again last night. Again, I don't think that does a good job of explaining why you had lower turnout in Trump areas, right? Like that. I mean, it might explain the shenanigans. We had the shenanigans that happened in Fulton DeKalb again, but this doesn't explain why we had worse turnout in Trump areas in general. Let's see what else. Other comments that I'm reading through your comments on various platforms right now. Angry Mets fans asked if I think we will get a strong third party out of this. I don't think so, and I don't think that's the right goal to go for. We're not a parliamentary system. We're first past the post system, and as a result, the presidency is winner take all. Every legislative seat is winner take all in its own region. So that naturally tends towards the formation of two parties. And because that naturally tends toward it, we shouldn't be aiming to destroy the Republican Party, but rather capture it, make the Republican Party more like the base. And that I think is doable. Somebody said Ali Alexander's quitting politics. Is he? Well, he did say victory or death or something. I think that was a little bit of an overreaction. This is not the end of the world, but it's not good. Somebody says, Stacey Abrams over loser Kemp should have never been a runoff in the first place. That's another big contributor to our loss is that I wouldn't say necessarily, I think the biggest one is like Kemp basically let Stacey Abrams rewrite Georgia election law. I don't know why that happened. I don't know why we let Mark Elias rewrite Georgia election law. It seems kind of obvious that we should be a little bit more aggressive about trying to protect these things. Let's see what else is there. Is it bad that people went to DC yesterday, possibly a lot of Georgia voters? I would think those people would vote early if they could. There was enough opportunity to vote if they wanted to do that. For example, like it was not hard for me to vote early. I was in Philadelphia on election day. I live in Maryland. I voted early in Maryland. It's not hard to do. So I wouldn't assign the blame to that. I think, if anything, the blame is on the people who were saying don't vote for the Republican Senate candidates unless they do X, Y, and Z and trying to impose all these conditions. It was a very silly thing because as I described yesterday, the campaign to get Trump to stay in office after November 3rd was always going to be an incredible long shot because the poll numbers, the election results, as the numbers were there, they were not the way we wanted them to be, and getting them to change is an incredible effort. Meanwhile, we had these Georgia elections and we could just win. And so the idea of putting those at risk for this long shot, I always thought was just a big miscalculation. That's not to say we shouldn't continue to fight on the Trump side, but rather that you shouldn't compromise the Senate effort to try and win the presidential effort. That was always my thought. Somebody says Hollywood money is to blame for Georgia. I don't blame money because again, we just didn't turn out our voters. Like there's so many mistakes that were made on our side that it just seems very silly to ignore those mistakes. And I really, really hope that we don't do that again. So will this be like Obama 2.0? I don't know. It could be very disenchanting for Democrats. Like I think we could be looking at actually something kind of similar to the disenchantment that Trump Republicans were feeling in 2018 with the GOP, because the way that Biden's staffing his administration is super moderate centrist. I mean, you just saw I don't know if you saw that the news came out, but Merrick Garland is going to be the Joe Biden's AG. That's a very moderate choice in the liberal world. Like, whereas, I mean, obviously Garland replacing Scalia would have been a massive move in the Supreme Court. I mean, of the possible AG candidates we could have seen from Biden, like Garland is by far the most moderate and by far like the least offensive. Because otherwise you could have gotten people like Javier Becerra or something, like one of these crazy lib state attorneys general who's just like going to like sue and prosecute all the president's people like for no reason. There were so many bad candidates. So that is what's going on there. Carpe says, we lost the country 2 decades ago. We just found out. I hope not. Chad Engleby asked a good question. Do I think the Dems pack the courts now? I don't think so. I don't think court packing is going to happen here. I think Joe Manchin is going to be a firewall to that. But I don't like relying on a Democrat. I think I hate that they're relying on a Democrat not to do this. Sorry for the cat meowing. Hey, kitty. That's the problem live streaming. Sometimes the cat comes down and whines. Should Manchin be offered a leadership position as a reward for joining the GOP? I don't think he'll do that. Why would he? Why would he do that? He's like literally the swing vote in the Democrat caucus, and every Democrat will be coming to him to try and persuade him. I don't think we can possibly get him to change his mind. Okay. It's 1:02 p.m. I think that we're going to get started on the VP, the joint session soon. So I want to kind of wrap it up. But before I go, those of you who are new here, please subscribe at youtube.com/human events. Periscope is shutting down soon. So if you're watching this on Periscope goes away in like three months, which is really annoying and obnoxious, because that's where I've spent most of my time building a platform. So I have a personal request to you that if you want to continue to like follow and get notifications for when I go live, go to youtube.com/human events and subscribe to the channel. That's going to be something. I mean, we're trying to build up various other platforms because Periscope is going away. So that is a personal request from me to you. I really do. If there's one thing you do after you close this, please hit subscribe go to youtube.com/human events if you have not already done so. Okay. Wow. Any final comments here? Somebody says Twitter Live will be the replacement. I hope so, but I mean, again, the way it's currently functioning, it doesn't look to me like they're making it easy to bring your followers on Periscope over or anything like that. So until they've actually created a Twitter Live like infrastructure for live streamers, I'm going to be recommending people subscribe to my YouTube. And I don't have a good thing there. So somebody says, don't hang my hat on YouTube. No, I'm not hanging my hat on YouTube. Oddly enough, this is currently going live. I live streamed this to Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope all at the same time. And I'm trying to kind of build up all three. So if you're a Facebook person, feel free to like the page. That's, I think it's facebook.com/human events media that you can do. So, all right. That's what I got for you. Thank you so much for watching. And we'll talk to you soon. Peace.